All, welcome to one more show. This is Dr. Mubin Sayed. So, I am a little frustrated today because of this little message. So, let me play this message by CDC. And keep in mind that, let me actually share my screen to, to keep myself coherent. So, here, and again, please, these news outlets that I'm using, I just Google and whichever comes up, I just use them. So, no leaning right or left. Here on 5th of January, Wednesday, the Biden administration or the current healthcare administration, they said it has no plans to change the definition of fully vaccinated against the coronavirus to include getting a booster shot. This is just now, 5th January. And here is the, again, I Googled for this video snippet because I had watched it earlier. I think this is a running for US Congress. So, again, no affiliation, not at all. This is what came up, and I just used it. So, please forgive me for, or don't paint me for any leaning here. Check this out.
And what we really are working to do is pivot the language to make sure that everybody is as up to date with their COVID-19.
So, pivot the language. So, what happens is, instead of saying that, all right, now everybody who doesn't have a booster is not vaccinated and you need to go get the boosters, pivot the language. So, not going to use the fully vaccinated anymore. We're going to change that word, but now we're going to include getting boosted. And that is how the new word will come in. This is a very markety tactic. Um, and I had tweeted a few days ago where there was a there was an article about the CDC's communication and communication gaffes and the miscommunications. One day masks are working and the other day masks are not working, and then come back to the workplace in 10 days, and now come back in 5 days, and then come back without any further care, and then now come back with the test. The whole thing is just all over the place. And here, our director for CDC, she's been getting coaching from media experts to say how to present. And I can totally see this. This is my conjecture now, that now the people are scratching their head to say, how do we now add boosters to the definition of you are not fully vaccinated if you don't have a booster? And some media guru said, you know what? Don't even say fully vaccinated anymore. Just change the definition and now include it in there. And that, it is just bothering me. So hear this out.
The language to make sure that everybody is as up to date with their COVID-19 vaccines as they personally could be, should be, based on when they got their last vaccine. So importantly, right now, we're pivoting our language. We really want to make sure people are up to date. That means if you recently got your second dose, you're not eligible for a booster, you're up to date. If you are eligible for a booster and you haven't gotten it, you're not up to date, and you need to get your booster in order to be up to date. And what we really are working to do is pivot the language to.
So, this is an article in CNN. Again, no political affiliation wherever I found something. Here, director has been, so if you see here, for months, Walensky had met privately with prominent Democratic media consultant Mandy Grunwald to improve her communication skills and continue to do so, according to a person familiar with the previously unreported session. Again, trying to do better communication, there's nothing bad about it. But it's not about better or bad communication. It's about a consistency of the communication. And in my opinion, we haven't reached a point to be able to say, let me back up. We have reached a point where vaccine efficacies are below the threshold of meeting the success criteria. And if we want to continue to go vaccine route, although there are, with the molnupiravir and Paxlovid and the long-term and monoclonal antibodies that seem to have better efficacy than and longer efficacy than the vaccine-based efficacies, we should have thought about all of that and then thought about who is at risk. I mean, think about it for a second with me. What we are saying here is, and tell me where I am wrong. What we are saying here, what I'm hearing here is vaccine eligibility. It is, I think, Johnson and Johnson within 2 months of the first dose, or the primary series just being one dose, and then within 6 months, which have now been reduced to 5 months of the other two, Moderna and Pfizer, of their fully vaccinated status, and then 5 months ago after. That is eligibility. Now, in that eligibility, what we are saying is that within 5 months, these vaccines have no benefit at all, or very less benefit, enough less benefit that we are saying you must go get a booster. Again, I'm not claiming that the research shows that there is zero benefit. There is actually benefit, but from this language, we can assume that we are saying 5 months later, there is not much benefit. Please go get a booster so you can have your immune system ramped up. Then there are monoclonal antibodies that claim to have longer benefit than this time. Similarly, there are drugs as well that seem to have better efficacy during the acute illness. Although I would totally agree that we should not put anyone at risk of getting acute illness. Then consider that Omicron itself is becoming milder. So that means the decision making could have been to say, there are folks who are at risk. Maybe they are immunosuppressed, maybe because of age, maybe because of the type of therapies they're using. There is a number of factors. And in such folks, the risk of a severity of the disease may be more. And for such individuals, we recommend that you go ahead and get the boosters and help the immune system as much as you can. Here, what I'm hearing is everyone who had been vaccinated, other than anyone within 2 months for Johnson and Johnson, and within 5 months of Pfizer and Molnupiravir, Pfizer and Moderna, and I believe CDC just recommended, and this is what I believe that I heard, that 3 months within 3 months of the infection. If that is not the case, then one has to go get the booster. We should actually collect the data for the side effects, for the impact of, once again, asking 200 million or 330 million people. Not everybody is eligible, there are children as well. So 200, 250 million people, to say, head back, go get one more vaccine dose. That that bothered me. I mean, I have said it many times, and I get beaten up for this as well, that I'm a pro-vaccine person. But the science part, the professional part, that just keeps disappearing whenever such decisions are made. Where is the science to say everyone should be boosted? So, please tell me, how do you see this? Maybe I am missing something. Um, I'm just too frustrated with this kind of a messaging. And maybe in the US we are just in that bad of a shape that we got to. Doug says, hello, we've been watching a 2x again. Thank you very much. Yeah, so correct. Ema spoke out against boosting. I talked about why they said it. So again, that is a theoretical mechanism that has seen only in the mice, not in the human beings. But there is more than just those mechanisms. There are side effects, there is risk, we saw what happened to many people in the previous wave of vaccination. And there is also a dismissal of the fact that even when the vaccine antibodies have waned, there is a chance for them, for the immune system to reactivate when the exposure occurs and to defend the body, and that would be in majority of the healthy people. This is part of immunology concepts. I totally agree that there are individuals who sadly, unfortunately, may have circumstances that they need continuous help. And there are many mechanisms to help now. Our government has spent money for those mechanisms. We have paid billions of dollars for these drugs and other things as well. I'm just not, there is a disregard in this whole thing. That is what bothers me. There's just a disregard to say there are humans on the other end who, um, I think that we all know where we. So Madeline says, can you look at Omicron B2? I would look at B2 as well. This is totally fine. DVS says boosters keep more people out of hospital, frees hospital capacity up. Very good. But the question is, you are looking at studies nowadays to see what is the propensity, who ends up in a hospital. And then definitely talk about that to say, and CDC had already said that here are the boosters recommended for at-risk groups. You are correct if we said generally Omicron is going to behave badly for everyone vaccinated or not. And the at least the studies that are coming in, we just looked at the California study a few days ago, which I believe that CDC had actually tweeted that out as well, in which they said that Omicron is milder. So DVC, I like your comment here, and I want to use this comment to have this discussion that there can be, why is it last time as well, when the vaccines, for example, when Johnson and Johnson was discussed that this was going to cause issues for women under 50 years of age, I still remember I discussed it that the committee came back and they said no need to stop or give guidance for women, let's say, should not use it. And the reason given was that the messaging will become very complex. I think that people can understand the messaging, doctors can provide the messaging. There can be easily processes put in place for someone to say, here is your risk factor, here is the best vaccine for you, and please go ahead and take it. Here is your risk factors. It looks like boosters have really worked very well. Please take it. So that part is not there. There is just a broad brush. So Leslie says, appreciate all your work for us, Dr. in the weekend. No less, thanks for keeping the cool beans up to date and with excellent. Thank you very much. At least I feel that from the data that is emerging with Omicron, it seems like it is a ray of light. It seems like the countries are actually opening up. The pandemic is winding down. I totally agree that we are not at a place to say, because Omicron is milder, just everybody go crazy and just stop everything and no protections anymore. But I still believe that this is a very strong handed uh, management. Okay, so what do you think? So, what am I missing? What do you see? So, we saw one comment that was interesting. And so, Sudha says, isn't booster hurting immunity? Not yet. So, this idea, although EMA said that multiple boosters, and even if you look at EMA's messaging, they said two doses and maybe three and maybe four. So even they went up to 4 doses. I don't think that this is a mechanism that would just start happening within 1 or 2 doses. or 3 doses or 4 doses or even 5 doses. It's uh, the concept of T cell exhaustion is mostly pertinent. Number one, it is observed in the animal models. It is hypothesized to have occurred in HIV patients or possibly in HIV patients or hepatitis kind of cases where our body fails to clear them, and it's not tolerance, but instead it is exhaustion. The difference between tolerance and exhaustion is in tolerance, our body deliberately not react to something. It deliberately says, I'm okay with this antigen, I'm okay with our body, I'm okay with something else. But in exhaustion, our body knows I need to attack this antigen, I need to attack this enemy. But the cells have just become tolerant to it. Incorrectly, I shouldn't use the word tolerant. They have become exhausted, they don't respond very well to it. And so that is a hypothetical mechanism for humans. It is observed in animals. So I don't think that it is just a booster would do it. So I want to keep ourselves on the right, at least footing, that it just looks incorrect to create such big, broad, um, pivoted languages. Roller girl, how are you? So I want to answer this one as well. And I know that I would get pushback on this, but let me explain it. When we say gene therapy has a very specific technical meaning. In general, we can define anything to say, I am going to call this mic from now on to be a speaker. And then, well, that is the definition. But ideally, the gene therapy, let me explain. These vaccines are not gene therapy. But that doesn't mean that these vaccines do not have their own side effects, so they're not losing their efficacy, and we should not have better vaccines, and we should not look at to as much to reduce the possible side effects as we can. So look, here is the gene therapy. Let's say here is a cell. Inside the cell is a nucleus. Nucleus has genes. And it is actually very much possible that in some individuals, there are some genes that are defective. Let's say this gene is defective. So, what we are trying to do, what doctors and researchers are trying to do, is that can we figure out something from outside that can go in and replace this gene and repair it? This is a gene therapy. We are fixing a gene, or we are adding a gene that is not working correctly already in the person, or we're replacing it, we're fixing it. This is gene therapy, agreed. Now, the mRNA vaccines are messenger RNAs from outside, which is genetic material as well. It is a genetic material, but it is not changing a gene, but it is actually acting as a genetic material to make a protein. So what happens is, in case of gene inside the nucleus, a gene is present, and then the messenger RNA is formed from that gene, and that messenger RNA comes out and goes to a ribosome, and ribosome makes proteins. That is how normal function is. So here, instead of sending a messenger RNA out from the nucleus, you're sending a messenger RNA from outside into the cytoplasm, which would then be used as a template to make proteins. So it you can say, if you really want to use the word gene in this whole thing, you could say it is a gene based therapy. That is, the template that is coming in looks like a gene, or it has multiple genes that are used to make a spike protein. But it is not a gene therapy. It is not fixing any genes or changing any genes. And then, of course, gene therapies, although has never been successful, that there have been attempts to fix the genes. But what happens is our body within a year's time kind of removes those fixes, and the patient needs the repair again. So that technology is still in the beginning. Here we are not even doing that. So, Yakov, I don't mean to n- go into the, one can just start calling it gene therapy as well and say whatever gene is going from outside and is used as a therapeutic, it is a gene therapy. So now we have updated the definition, just like they updated the definition for vaccines as well. But it is not that classic gene therapy as we talk about. So Sudha says, isn't it advisable to take steroids after a week? And if inflammation is not coming down yet, your doctor gave you from day one. So that day one was actually day five. So as I had said before, I started having symptoms on 8th, but I just thought that was um, common cold and I was under the weather. So I actually, in some talks as well, I had a bout of cough. I had joint pains, I had muscle aches, I was not sleeping well. So there were a bunch of things that were happening. I was coughing, I had runny nose, and I just thought that was common cold. I never thought this would have been Omicron because for SARS-CoV-2 or COVID, we have a more severe symptom set in our mind. So it is actually 5 days after that one of the cool beans said, why don't you do a test? And I tested and I was positive. And then the next day, that is sixth day, is when I spoke with my doctor. He said, why not you start the steroids plus doxycycline? Then he prescribed it and I got it the day after. So about sixth or seventh day is when I really started. And I can still feel that maybe I didn't need to have it. Okay, cool. So Sergio, I want to actually do these discussions, so I'll probably go to Odyssey to have these. So TZ says steroids outpatient except inhaled and not advised. So basic idea is this. There are many countries where actually steroids are used from the day one and they still are doing okay. However, there was a study done on the viruses to see their clearing after the steroid is administered. And they saw that coronaviruses became more, they took more time to clear out when steroids were given and coronaviruses were active. So it take 8 9 days in the respiratory system for them to continue on if you suppress the immune system. So that is the background to it. Okay, good. um, so Caetano says, do you have anything to say about inactivated virus vaccine? So yes, I actually did a complete video about that and talk about it. I actually love them. However, I think we all know that again, from the administration's point of view, from decision making's point of view, at least in the US and many Western countries, inactivated vaccines are not used. And I think they're not even acknowledged as a vaccine for travel purposes. But I like them. I like them for spike protein. They can make antibodies for other parts of the virus as well. But I have, the only gap in my knowledge is that I have not seen exhaustive efficacy data and trial data as we are used to seeing. I mean, we talk about vaccines and we talk about decisions about the vaccine and we kind of feel unhappy, but there is even lesser data, at least to my knowledge, for these vaccines. So this is a very interesting. Kathy said, if you're afraid of GMO, you might be in trouble given all the modified foods. We change our genetic structure every day depending on exercises and diet. I was born with my dad's gold gym muscles. So actually, whenever our cell functions, and they are functioning all the time, that is how we are all operating right now. For a cell's function, genes open up and the messenger RNAs are formed, and then the genes go and do thing. Messenger RNA goes and make proteins, and cell does functions. So every time an insulin receptor, or let's say a steroid, comes into our cell, it would go to a gene and modify, not modify, open a gene and have it function. So our cell's genetic structures or genetic behavior, um, you can say DNA state, continues to change according to the need for the cell's function and the proteins. That is nothing um, abnormal. That is how we work. Hopefully, we would not have permanent new genes or replace genes unless they are needed. In the case of innate arm, we know that innate arm does not have memory cells. So instead, what an innate arm does, that is fascinating. What they do is that within the innate arm cells, when they are exposed to some antigen, they would reprogram their genetic material in a way that they can now more easily produce some proteins that they have become aware of to produce against a particular pathogen. So they kind of learn and have that learning incorporated into their retraining of the DNA operations. But compared to that, the acquired arm actually makes copies of the cells that are needed and just make them memory cells. Okay, so this is the discussion. Thank you very much for being here. Please tell me if, how do you think, what do you feel? Um, and we will see each other hopefully on Monday, if not tomorrow. Please have a great weekend. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. Keep taking care of yourself. Omicron is not a virus to say we are just fully home free. We still, it is still causing damage. So just be very, very careful. Thank you very much. And please like, subscribe, and share. And if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. You can use them to support it. Thank you, and see you tomorrow or day after. Bye bye.